Starbucks launches $1 billion 0-cents restructuring plan amid struggles. Starbucks is undertaking one of the most significant restructurings in its recent history as the company attempts to stabilize its business following months of declining performance and mounting operational challenges. On Thursday, September 25, the coffee giant announced a sweeping $1 billion 0-cents restructuring initiative that will close hundreds of stores across North America and cut nearly 1,000 jobs at its headquarters. In a filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC), Starbucks revealed that the total number of company-operated stores in North America will decline by roughly 1% during fiscal year 2025. The adjustment reflects both new store openings and a larger round of store closures. By the end of June, Starbucks had 18,734 stores in North America. That figure is expected to fall to about 18,300 by the end of September, marking a substantial contraction in the company's largest and most important market. The store closures are part of a broader effort to streamline operations, reduce costs, and refocus on higher-performing locations. According to industry analysts, Starbucks has long relied on an aggressive expansion strategy to drive revenue growth. But as consumer spending slows, inflation pressures linger, and competition intensifies, the company's dense network of stores has become a liability rather than an asset. Many outlets in urban centers and malls are struggling to maintain profitability, forcing the company to prioritize efficiency over scale. The restructuring also involves significant staff reductions at the corporate level. Approximately 900 employees at the company's headquarters will lose their jobs as part of this new round of layoffs. Earlier this year, Starbucks eliminated 1,100 corporate positions, meaning that more than 2,000 jobs have been cut under CEO Brian Niccol's leadership. Niccol, who took over the role with a mandate to reset the brand's direction, has emphasized that tough measures are necessary to restore financial health and set the stage for sustainable growth. Starbucks estimates that about 90% of the planned $1 billion 0-cents in restructuring costs will be tied to its North American operations. A large portion of the spending is expected to occur in fiscal year 2025, underscoring the urgency of the company's turnaround efforts. The funds will cover severance packages, lease terminations, and other costs related to store closures and employee reductions. The announcement reflects the broader challenges facing the retail and food service industry. Shifts in consumer habits, rising operational expenses, and evolving labor dynamics have left many companies reassessing their business models. For Starbucks, which built its global reputation on a premium coffee experience, the challenge now is to maintain brand appeal while cutting costs and slimming down operations. Despite the difficult news for employees and communities affected by closures, Starbucks executives remain optimistic. They argue that a leaner, more focused company will be better positioned to compete in the long term. By concentrating on profitable stores, investing in digital platforms, and adapting to changing consumer behavior, Starbucks hopes to reclaim its momentum. As fiscal 2025 approaches, the effectiveness of this restructuring will determine whether Starbucks can successfully reinvent itself or whether further cuts will follow. Russia's return to barter, sanctions, survival, and the cost of dependence on China. The international sanctions imposed on Russia after its invasion of Ukraine in 2022 have reshaped not only its financial landscape, but also the very mechanics of its foreign trade. With Western governments freezing Russian reserves, cutting off access to SWIFT, and tightening secondary restrictions, Moscow's commercial ties to the outside world have been thrown into disarray. Traditional settlement channels no longer function as they once did, and Russian corporations face the daily challenge of finding ways to pay or get paid. In this environment, barter, long regarded as a relic of the post-Soviet 1990s, has made a comeback. A desperate pivot. In the early 1990s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, barter became a survival tool. Russia's currency was collapsing, inflation was soaring, and enterprises could not settle accounts in hard cash. Goods were traded directly, oil for food, electricity for clothing, even boots for flour. This period left bitter memories of corruption and price manipulation, yet it ensured that trade did not grind to a complete halt. Now, 3 decades later, Russia once again finds itself pushed toward the same primitive fallback. Reuters reported recently that Chinese firms delivered automobiles to Russia in exchange for wheat, a deal in which Beijing's partners explicitly demanded grain as payment. The case illustrates the awkwardness of the current situation. When financial transactions cannot be cleared, commodities themselves become currency. The mechanics of modern barter. Chinese banks are reluctant to handle Russian funds, fearing they will fall afoul of U.S. or European sanctions and risk being cut off from the global financial system. For that reason, Russian partners increasingly propose settlement in goods. One example surfaced in August when Hainan Lumpan Oilfield Technology sought to exchange steel and aluminum alloys for marine engines. Customs data further revealed deals involving flaxseed traded for Chinese home appliances and construction materials, one of which was valued at approximately $100,000 0 cents in Russia's Ur region. Although small in scale compared to Russia's massive oil and gas trade, these examples highlight the persistence of barter as an adaptive strategy. Experts believe that while sanctions restrict capital flows, goods-for-goods swaps remain a legal gray zone that allows some Western manufactured items to slip back into Russia through intermediaries. Moscow's endorsement of barter. The Russian government has not only tolerated this return to barter, it has actively promoted it. In 2024, the Ministry of Economic Development issued a 14-page manual instructing businesses on how to conduct foreign barter trade. The document described barter as a legitimate way to bypass sanctions and even floated the idea of creating a national barter trading platform. The message was clear: no money, no problem. Trade potatoes? For officials under pressure, the notion that foodstuffs and raw materials can substitute for dollars and euros has become a lifeline. Yet the structural flaws remain glaring. Barter provides short-term access to goods, but deprives the state of much-needed tax revenues, since transactions are difficult to track and value accurately. It also weakens foreign exchange reserves, leaving the ruble exposed to continued depreciation. The economic quagmire. The ripple effects are visible across Russia's economy. Without stable cash flow, companies cannot meet tax obligations, starving the government of revenue. As reserves dwindle, the ruble slides further, pushing up the cost of imports and triggering inflation. Russia's central bank has admitted that the economy is in technical recession, with consumer prices climbing and real incomes falling. For ordinary Russians, the shift from monetary trade to barter is not an abstract economic detail. It translates into higher prices at the grocery store and a sense that the economy is reverting to crisis mode. China's central role. Amid this turmoil, China has emerged as Russia's indispensable partner. For 15 consecutive years, China has been Russia's largest trading counterpart. In 2024, bilateral trade reached $245 billion, 0 cents, accounting for more than a third of Russia's total commerce. On paper, this looks like a success story, but the balance of dependence tilts heavily in Beijing's favor. Russia exports mainly crude oil, natural gas, timber, and some agricultural products. While these commodities are valuable, their profitability is eroded by exorbitant transportation costs. In some cases, shipping timber from Siberia to China costs more than the wood itself. Meanwhile, China supplies Russia with cars, electronics, machinery, and an array of consumer goods. Walk the streets of Moscow today, and Chinese brands like Chery and Haval dominate, though more than 80% of the components in these vehicles are manufactured in China, with Russian factories reduced to final assembly lines. Even Russia's defense industry, once a symbol of self-reliance, now depends on Chinese bearings and precision tools. Friction in payments and logistics. For Chinese exporters, dealing with Russian buyers has become increasingly fraught. Russia's foreign exchange shortages mean payments are often delayed. To hedge their risks, Chinese merchants typically demand a 30% advance, yet profit margins remain razor-thin. Transport compounds the problem. Shipping by sea is cheaper but takes more than a month, while the faster China-Europe Railway Express carries staggering freight costs. As one frustrated trader quipped, It would be cheaper to send it by donkey. Logistical inefficiencies have even given rise to backpack trade along the border. In places like Heilongjiang province, Chinese porters physically carry goods across the river into Russia, making multiple trips a day. Videos show them leaving at dawn and returning at dusk, symbolizing the surreal collapse of modern supply chains into manual labor. The social strains at the border. In September 2025, China introduced a trial visa-free entry policy for Russian citizens holding ordinary passports, allowing stays of up to 30 days. Almost immediately, border towns saw waves of Russian visitors, arms laden with shopping bags. They flocked not as tourists but as desperate consumers seeking affordable medicines, groceries, and household goods, unavailable or prohibitively expensive at home. The scenes underscored a grim truth. Russian families face food inflation exceeding 40%, medical shortages, and a collapse in purchasing power. The middle class is no longer debating lifestyle choices, it is grappling with survival. Financial gambles, panda bonds, and credit ratings. Beyond goods trade, Russia's financial desperation has led to unusual maneuvers in capital markets. In September 2024, Moscow announced plans to issue panda bonds, debt denominated in yuan and sold in China. Remarkably, Chinese rating agencies granted Russia's state companies the highest ACA ratings, even as Fitch, Moody's, and S&P had downgraded them to junk or withdrawn coverage entirely. Critics in China warned that this was less about market confidence than about political calculation. By labeling Russian debt as safe, Beijing compels its own banks and funds to purchase it, effectively transferring risk from Moscow to Chinese institutions. For many Chinese citizens, the idea that their savings could be channeled into Russian bonds sparked outrage. On social media, one commentator compared it to buying Evergrande stock after its chairman was arrested. Reckless and absurd. The risk is obvious. Should Russia default, the losses will reverberate through China's financial system. Yet Beijing persists, motivated by strategic fear. Xi Jinping's government dreads a Russian collapse, which would leave China facing the West's pressure alone. Geopolitics behind the trade. On the surface, China and Russia present themselves as united partners in energy, security, and trade. But beneath the rhetoric lies a cautious dance of self-interest. Moscow raises natural gas prices. Beijing negotiates hard for discounts, and both sides leave critical terms vague. Their alliance is less about trust than about necessity. For the CCP, keeping Russia afloat is a geopolitical calculation. A weakened but surviving Russia serves as a buffer against Western pressure. For Putin, Chinese support is a lifeline. Together they sustain the image of a no-limits partnership, even as each calculates how to extract maximum advantage. A fragile future. The resurgence of barter in Russia's foreign trade is both a symbol and a symptom. It symbolizes the country's exclusion from global financial systems and its reliance on outdated methods of exchange. And it is a symptom of deeper structural weakness, declining revenues, a shrinking middle class, and an economy that cannot function without China. While barter may keep goods flowing in the short term, it offers no solution to Russia's broader economic crisis. Without access to stable capital and functioning financial channels, the country risks further isolation and decay. For China, the partnership brings leverage but also risk, binding its financial system to a volatile partner at war with the West. In the end, barter trade cannot disguise the reality. Russia's economy is trapped in survival mode, and its future hinges on how long Beijing is willing to foot the bill.